Coming up next on Rugby Wrap-Up, Major League Rugby Season 2 with Steve Lewis and Matt McCarthy. Rugby Wrap-Up brought to you in part by Irish Rugby Tours, The Balanced Palate, nutrition for peak performance, AFIA Sports Training Group, and the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street in New York City. Welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy and Steve Lewis at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 in Midtown Manhattan, talking rugby. And, Steven, we're going to talk a little bit more of Major League Rugby. But first off, welcome back from Houston.
Why, thank you. Good afternoon.
What happened in Houston? Anything in particular in Houston?
Yes, lots of knowledge shared, lots of old friends seen, new friends made, that kind of thing.
And awards won, ladies and gentlemen. Stephen won the Senior Men's Coach of the Year for the second time in a row in 4 years.
So, yep. So great credit to all the players that I managed to coach this year. Had a lot of talented players to work with, also fellow coaches. And so between Army and Bulldog Rugby, obviously won the national championship and then the Collegiate All-American. So it's easy guys to coach in many ways.
Well done, sir. And folks, it was my idea to put his trophy in front of him. He was very reluctant to sit there with it in front of him, so don't go too hard on him. All right, let's talk Major League.
Pretentious, moi?
No, he's not. No. Major League Rugby, yes. Stephen. Major League Rugby. We talked about it last week for the first time. We're a week away from Season 2.
Yep, sophomore year, Season 2 coming up.
Let's go over last week's matches.
Yeah, you had Austin beating Houston narrowly down in Houston on a Friday night. Was not particularly thrilling encounter, but you know, sometimes preseason it's a matter of getting troops out there, getting a look at people, and you don't get a lot of continuity. You had, I believe, Glendale squeak past Seattle 38-31. And then obviously the game between the two new teams, Toronto and New York, you can fill us in on.
Yes, the game between Rooney and the Toronto Arrows that never was, because we had the freakiest of experiences. We were on the bus. I was on the team bus. We were leaving New York.
Is this a long story?
No, unfortunately it's not, Steve. 7 a.m. we're leaving. We're going up First Avenue north from 86th Street. We're about to turn on 96th Street from First Avenue, so we've only gone 10 blocks. And a driver decides to cut in front of us from the left-hand lane. The bus driver slams on the brakes, stuff flying all over. Nobody got hurt, but we hit the door, and it took the cops 2.5 hours to get to the scene and another 25 minutes to process. So in that three-hour window, they only had the field until 6 p.m. in Buffalo. They were scheduled to kick off at 4.
So game didn't happen.
Game didn't happen, but the Arrows, to their credit, went to Buffalo anyway. They had an intra-squad scrimmage, and they picked up some of the costs.
So let's talk about Toronto. What do they look like? My preseason tip, I actually think they are quite cohesive. They are essentially the Ontario Blues dominant team in the provincial championship in Canada for some time. They brought in a lot more Canadian talent, some foreigners, but heavily Canadian. To the extent that they have 7 picked for the Canada ARC squad. They brought back Carpenter as a coach, Chris Silverthorne, director of rugby, Mark Winnicott, general manager. They are in good shape. I think they're going to be very competitive.
Yeah, you picked them last week to win.
Yep, I think they're top 3. If you're forcing me to pick a winner, I'm going for them.
Well, I'm just saying, it's on tape. So, yeah, and I like Rooney. Rooney's got some good players in camp. They just added Will Leonard, the Irish center. We talked about with Gary
Shannon, center. He hasn't played for Ireland.
Right. Yep. But no, he's an Irish.
He's Irish.
He's an Irish center.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You didn't really, I don't think you had to specify that.
Well, an Ireland center.
He's not an Ireland center, ladies and gentlemen. He's an Irish center.
You called him an Ireland center.
I said he's an Irish center.
You didn't. Check the tape.
Okay. Anyway, he's an Irish center. And he's a good one. He was, Dave Katz actually is a big fan of him. Dave Katz, that's right, Alpha Trooper. Going to mention him on the air, pointed him out, and I was watching him in training. He's interesting. And, if they're filling that void of Seamus Kelly going away. Yeah,
well, obviously, Rooney, the big, addition this week is Ben Foden, right? Their star player coach, as it were, former England, Northampton player. So he gets in town this week. So what he makes of Randall's Island on a Monday night,
fortunately. So
we shall see. So, yeah, that's Rooney. They're going to be competitive, too. I reckon they're top 4 as well.
Yeah, they're a good bunch of guys, too. They seem to have some cohesiveness going on. New Orleans,
yeah. So it finished 6th last year. I think they correctly addressed what was one of their major concerns, which was ballast up front, beef up front. So they brought in some legitimate players there. Kane Thompson, a little bit long in the tooth. I think he's 36, 37 now, but he's a former Samoan international.
3 World Cups.
Yes, indeed. Very experienced player. They've also brought in Kyle Bailey, who is actually one of Canada's better players. He actually played for the Ohio Aviators. I'm quite familiar with him. Good player, plays anywhere back five, solid. And, of course, Cam Dolan, who, was at San Diego last year. Obviously played. He's from life. Played a lot with Old Blue. One might have thought he'd be a natural fit for Rooney. But I think one of the thoughts that a general manager has to have is if a guy is a starting eagle, he could be gone those 6 weeks. Yeah. So sometimes you don't want too many starting eagles in your squad because they're going to be gone for 6 of 16 weeks.
Sure. And he's also got that comfort zone. Although he played for Coach Tolkien with the World Cup team, he also is familiar with Nate Osborne, the head coach of NOLA, because Nate was on the World Cup squad as well as a coach.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think they lost a few as well, Matt Houston and Sebastian Kahn in the back row, but I think they've replaced them pretty well. I think they've made some good choices there, actually, in New Orleans. And also brought in a favourite player of mine, Nick Feeks, All-Star from Lindenwood, coached them at Collegiate All-Americans last year. He actually captained a very good Collegiate All-American team. He is a talented boy, U.S. eligible next year, can play a variety of positions.
You mean the one and only Nick Feeks that you were talking up to me out in Glendale?
Yep, I rate him.
Yeah, New Orleans has made some decent moves. And I've also got a note from Coach Nate Osborne. We kept a good core of players from last year, and our goal was to make our squad deeper, and we definitely did that. Kudos to them, and they've also improved the facility, the venue. They've done some work on that, so that's a plus.
Low bar.
Yeah, it was a low bar, Nate, but no, just kidding. It's good to see that you're doing well with that.
Let's talk about Glendale.
Okay.
Yeah, so Glendale pipped at the post last year in the final. We all know they're a solid squad. Lost Bryce Campbell. I think the interesting addition to Glendale is actually on the coaching staff, not the playing staff. So they have brought in Pete Borlase as a forwards coach, who coached Denver Stampede, coached Denver Barbarians, played for Canterbury, played in Ireland for Connaught. I think he took a year off really last year. I think he could make a big difference. Good coach, well respected. That's an interesting addition from a coaching perspective.
We just talked about NOLA, and we talked about Glendale. The two players that are now with Rooney, Matt Houston and John Quill, are big additions there. And Glendale picked up Hanko.
Yeah, yes. So
there's a lot of
you're starting to see people bounce around between teams this year too. It's only natural. People, first year and people go where they get a crack, and then players can, where they're more comfortable. Relationships with coaches. We'll see more of this.
It'll be interesting to see the first trade in Major League, like a straight up trade.
I think we're a couple of years away from that.
Yeah. A couple of years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Seattle.
Seattle. Well, actually, funnily enough, probably the news here is also on the coaching side. So, famously went through last year without a coach, with Phil Mack as a player coach. Some senior players there, obviously Matt Turner, big fan of his. They hired Anton Moolman, Western Province, to come in and coach them, but he's not here yet. So, my understanding, and I stand to be corrected if so, but he hasn't quite got his visa yet and isn't in country. So, they are, manning through it right now without their coach, so that's probably not what they wanted. But
if history repeats, they'll be champions again with no coach.
Sure, and they probably the addition there, Ben Sema, big siege gun of a boot, young fly half. If he gets a lot of playing time, he certainly has a future. He's got a great boot.
Yeah, they're a solid squad, and I was talking to James English on the bus, the non-ride to Buffalo, and he was bringing up how valuable a guy, certain guys are on and off the pitch. And he was talking about Shalom Suniula and Matt Turner. Those two guys are right up there in terms of integrity on and off the pitch.
Matt Turner is not as old as you think.
I know. Well, I never said he was that old.
Fair enough.
I never said he was that old. Okay, so let's move down to Austin. Dell Diamond Stadium is a new home. You've got full structure with professional environments, 6,000 square foot office space, an indoor training facility, and the players are training every day from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. You've also got Andrew Suniula, brother to Shalom, and Roland, who is also in Seattle now.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew is transitioning to the, let me read this right, team manager, and skill coach. So
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good citizen, good human being.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think they're going to struggle. They've lost players. They've lost, we talked about Hanko, Petty Vandenberg retired, and they haven't really replaced them with a great deal of quality, in my opinion. It's interesting, some of these teams now are starting to get sort of different national identities. So obviously, Austin with Thierry Dopin as the GM, they've had a few French guys last year. They're going in a few more French guys. That's been interesting. You see some other teams like Houston have a bunch of Uruguayans. It's an interesting thing that teams start to develop a flavor and identity and perhaps some connection with a foreign country. And Austin is French.
Yeah. Let's go to Houston next.
Houston, they still got their Flying Fijians. Olasana and BC. They've shored up their sort of front five stocks a little bit. Obviously, Fitzpatrick as a prop, as a coach, probably wanted to address that. They've gone pretty heavy on the South America thing. And interestingly, a lot of South Americans in the MLR this year. Combine was held in Glendale under the auspices of Rugby Americas, who actually picked up the tab for the visas. So their remit was to promote America's hemisphere players in this professional league, the only professional league. And so they've done that, and we've seen a lot more South Americans, Chileans, Uruguayans, and Houston's got a lot of Uruguayans.
Yeah, and I was noticing that Nola's got some Uruguayans.
Yep,
in the squad.
And Houston lost a couple of key players, though. Mullen, the prop, obviously has gone to the UK, and Kyle Simpson's come to Rooney, who was their captain, hard-nosed, back row forward that I really rate.
Right, yeah, and West Point guy.
Assistant coach at West Point now with Matt Sherman. Right. Matt Sherman on the West Point men.
And that leaves us with Utah.
Yeah, so a lot of the stories for Utah, unfortunately, have been off the field. There have been some reports and some rumors swirling that perhaps their financial situation isn't as healthy as other clubs, to the extent that there were potentially some disputes about payment and what have you. I can't attest to any of that, but I've read it in a couple of articles in different places, and I've heard from a couple of players here and there. So hopefully that's sorted out. Coaching-wise, they brought in Stevie Scott, a former Scottish international, as a hooker. They haven't brought in a lot of players.
They're kind of hoping on the comeback of the Whippy brothers, right?
Yeah, they're a solid pair. Lost Lasiki, obviously, but a lot of good homegrown talent in Utah. But is it enough to compete with everyone else's imported and homegrown talent? So I think you've got to pick someone to come 8th and 9th. And unfortunately, I think Utah and Austin will be down there this year.
I'll tell you what, again, we talked about this last week. What's cool about this league and what we're saying now is that we're looking at the two new teams coming in, and we're looking at them as coming in as strong franchises.
Yeah, the two additions, I think, are solid. I'm taking them both to be top four.
Yeah. On that note, Steve, we're out of time, but I just want to salute the New York Rugby Club, going to turn 90 in February. Ladies and gentlemen, Botanical Gardens, if you want to come, you can. Just check out New York Rugby Club on any of the social media platforms or at this and order a ticket and be there. It's going to be the who's who of rugby, 90 years, the New York Rugby Club. Stephen, thank you. Mr. two-time senior men's coach of the year in USA Rugby. Did I get it right?
You got it right.
All right. There you go. And there's that award. Well-deserved. Matt McCarthy for Steve at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 in New York City, signing off.